name is Baylee and this is Bagels Books, and today we're going to be doing a May wrap-up. So before we get into that, let me know what your favorite thing you read in May was and your least favorite thing, if you had one. And if you had a good month in general or not. But I had the best month so far this year because I read, I think it's 8 books. Let me count because I'm dumb. Yeah. Wow. That was a lot. Okay. And another thing I like to do is draw a card at the beginning of the month and like fulfill that card as a prompt with one of my reads. So this month my prompt was just read a book you're most excited about. So I'm excited about everything. So I feel like that one wasn't very hard. So I think any of the books could really fulfill that prompt. So the first book I read, it was Part of Your World by Abby Jiminez. This is a romance novel about a woman who is a doctor and she gets stranded in a small town one night because her car breaks down and she meets this guy that's a lot younger than her. They have a one-night stand and then it becomes a relationship, obviously. This book was really, really good. There was no like super steamy scenes. It was a cute romance. There was a lot of talk about abuse. The main character was married. Well, she wasn't married, but she was in like a really long-term relationship with this guy. And he was abusive to her, and it talks about her like figuring that out, her issues with trying to separate from this man. And in the small town that the guy is from, there's a friend of his kind of who's going through a physical abusive relationship, and they try to help her get out of that. So there's a lot of talk about abuse, and it's really beautiful. And I just really enjoyed this book, and it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. It's great. She is now one of my favorite romance authors, and I'm very excited to read other books by her. I think she has 4 more that I haven't read, so very excited about those. The next book I read, finally, I read Gone Girl. Finally. I've been dreading this book for a long time because what I feared has happened. I didn't love it like everyone else loves it, but I blame that on the fact that this was released in 2012, 11 years ago, and I've read a ton of thrillers since then. If I read this in 2012, I bet this would have blown my whole mind into pieces. Not only because I was young, I would have been a sophomore in high school, and everything I knew about the world would have been shattered, but I've just read so many thrillers since then, and I watched the movie, so I knew a lot that was going to happen. Nothing surprised me. It was really good still, but it's also really long. I think it could have been a little bit shorter, but I think I ended up giving it 4 stars just because it's my own problem of why I didn't love it. Is I knew what it was gonna happen, so it wasn't super exciting, and I've just read so many thriller books. This was nothing new to me, but it was the thriller in 2012. Like, nothing else existed, and I know that, so I didn't want to like give it 2 or 3 stars because of that, because this was the OG like super suspenseful thriller. So I wanted to give it credit for that it's my fault I didn't love it. But this story is about Nick and Amy Dunn. It is their wedding anniversary morning. He goes to work like he always does. He gets a call from his neighbor and was like, hey, like your front door's open, your cat's outside. And he's like, oh, thanks, I'll fix it. So he goes to the house, gets his cat, and goes inside and was like, hey, Amy, like you left the door open. Well, she's not there. And like the house is a mess. Like there's been an altercation. So the wife is then presumed missing. And cops are called. They search the house. Of course, their first suspect is the husband because it always is the husband and they're always a suspect. And so you're going through this book just trying to find out if Nick did something to his wife. And alternating chapters are like Amy's diary. So she's written a diary their whole relationship, and you get his perspective present day, and then the diary from when they first met, their first dates, when they first got married, all that. So it was very good, and I'm, like I said, at the time this was out, it was revolutionary, but I've just read so much and watched so much stuff and consumed so much stuff at this point that it wasn't anything crazy to me, sadly. Very sad. The next book I read was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. It is a fantasy series that you can get on Kindle Unlimited if you have it. That's where I read it. This book was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. We'll just start there. I have never really read an adult fantasy book, I don't think. I think I've only read YA fantasy. So this was definitely new for me, but I wanted to give it a go because it has vampires in it. And I was a Twilight girly growing up, so I really thought I would enjoy it, and I did. It was like Hunger Games, but with like vampires. There's a romance. There's one steamy scene. The end was crazy. It was such a good book. It's a duology, kind of. So there is a second book already out on Kindle Unlimited that I hope to get to soon, but this book was so good. It's a human who was adopted by the like vampire king when she was a kid because he came through her town, destroyed everything, killed everyone, found her and took her in, and was like, I'm gonna raise her as his own. So like her dad's a vampire, but she's a human, and so he's trained her since she grew up how to fight because she lives in a house with a bunch of vampires. So she is a fighter, and she hunts vampires. That's not common knowledge to anybody around, but she does hunt them on her like spare time. And there is this really big, I don't want to call it a trial, but it's like a competition they do every so many years, hosted by like this goddess in this world. And so everyone who wants to be, this is where like the Hunger Games comes in. You go in there, only one survives, everyone else dies, and you get one like wish granted from their goddess, which is like the goddess that created vampires. It's a very, like, the world building was incredible. I loved that. I loved the like gods and goddesses and the stories behind all that. And there's like different vampires, so it's not just, oh, vampires exist. There are like different breeds of vampires. And it was, they're against each other, kind of. It was just a really good story. I don't know if I explained it very well, but it's super amazing. I have not seen, like, anybody rate it very low. I think 4 and up. It's a very good book. It was just super action-packed. It was very good. The end was crazy. Highly recommend. The next one I read was Secretly Yours by Tessa Baylee. I have read one other Tessa Baylee. It happened one summer, and really enjoyed it, so I picked this one up, and it is, of course, another romance. It is about this girl named Hallie, I want to say. I probably didn't write it down, no. Her name's Hallie, and she lives in this town she's grown up in her whole life, and she owns her own business, like yard business, planting like gardens and tending to the gardens that she made. And in her town, there is a vineyard. She is super close to the owner because, like I said, she grew up in this town, so she knows her. Well, one day she overheard the owner talking about her son and how he was coming back to live with her for a bit. And this guy, forgot his name, Hallie has been like in love with, infatuated with since she was in high school. She had a crush on him in high school, and it just like has held the torch for him this whole time. So he's coming back. The relationship between those two, I don't think it's a spoiler to say there's a relationship between those two. It's a freaking romance book. So there's love letters involved and like them two getting together. Yeah, very steamy. The most steamy thing I've ever read. And not even just steam, just like the things they do. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't enjoy those scenes at all. And I'm usually fine with open door scenes and things happening, but I did not enjoy those. And I don't know any other way to put it. I did not enjoy those scenes at all. None of them, not a one. And I just didn't really care for either of the main characters. I didn't think they actually seemed good together. I didn't feel like they had chemistry. I didn't understand why he wanted to be in a relationship with her. He was super objectifying to her, in my opinion. I just did not. No. I don't even know why I gave it 2 stars, honestly. There are parts I liked, like the main character's sister I liked, the guy. The main character girl, I liked her best friend. And there were just like small parts I liked because there's an underlying stuff. Like the main girl character has just lost her grandma, so there's talk of grief and loss and other things like that. And the main guy character has issues with his dad. So like they talk about their personal issues, and I liked those stories. I just didn't see them together like as a couple at all, and I did not enjoy their intimate times together at all. So that was a real bummer for me, because I really enjoyed It Happened One Summer, so I was super excited to read this one. And it did not live up to that. The next thing I read was a short story called 6 Scorched Roses. So this is a short story that happened, it's in the same world as The Serpent and the Wings of Night. It's not any of the same characters, anything like that. It's in the same world, but like a different area completely. So you still hear about vampires, you hear about the gods, you hear about the goddesses, like the stuff you learned in the previous book, but it's separate characters, all that. Like I said, it was a short story, less than 200 pages. I really enjoyed it. It was a Beauty and the Beast retelling with a human and a vampire. There was a steamy scene. Really enjoyed it because we got to meet a different god in this story. So I enjoyed that aspect. And we got to see like a human town, I guess, because where we're at, it's vampires. It's just vampires. So it was nice to see how the humans live in this world and their thoughts about vampires, not seeing them every day like the human girl from The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Very good. Oh, the next book I read, y'all. One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave that 5 stars. Okay, if you haven't read that, read it. That book destroyed me. I cried the whole time I was reading it. Only read it if you want to cry. It was beautiful, but it's the most heartbreaking thing I think I've ever read in my life. So it's about a woman who, her high school sweetheart, they, you know, are together, they go to college, they get married, whatever. They're together for I don't even know how long. Well, on their 1-year anniversary, instead of like being home and being with her, he's like, hey, I want to go, I got this opportunity to go on this trip to Alaska and I really want to go. I've never been, I've never seen glaciers, and you've gotten to go. And like a whole thing with their relationship is they traveled all the time. So he's like, I really want to go see glaciers. Like you got to do that in college and I never got to do that. And it's just something I really want to do. And this opportunity came up. And she's like, yeah, go. It's for a few days. Don't even worry about it. Like we'll have plenty of anniversaries. No sweat. I'm sure she was a little upset about it, but she's trying to be cool about it. Well, whilst in Alaska, I think he makes it to Alaska and they're going to go to a tiny island, I want to say. And he's like in a helicopter. Well, the helicopter crashes over the ocean and bodies are found washed upon shore. Not his, but Bati's and like the remnants of the helicopter. So he is presumed dead. And he is dead 3 years later. I don't know how to explain it because it tells it in like wonky timeline. So 3 years later, she has met someone else. Moved back home, met someone else, been in a relationship with him, they've gotten engaged, okay? Then, she gets a call, and it's her husband, and he's like, hey, pretty sure that's what he says, hey, it's me, or something crazy. Well, he's alive, he didn't die at all, so then she's in this terrible, terrible situation where she has to choose between her husband, whom she thought was dead for 3 years and grieved, you know, she grieved it, stuff happened, yeah. Or her fiance who she's supposed to marry in a few months. And so it is just about that. And it's so freaking sad. That's all I can say. But it was so beautiful at the same time. And it was wonderful. And it's a movie and I really want to watch it. But I also heard today that it's not that good and that makes me sad. But I'm gonna watch it anyway. This is definitely a book I could see myself reading like over and over again. I don't know why. It was just so beautiful, but I want to say one of the saddest books I've ever read. For sure. It's just not a situation anyone runs in. Like, obviously we saw in Castaway, the movie. But other than that, like, does this happen? I'm sure it does. Like with military and stuff. But gosh, so sad. So sad. But so good. The next book I read was What Have We Done by Alex Finlay, which was their 2023 release. So I've read Every Lost Fear by them and The Night Shift, which I loved both of those. So the one this year is coming out. I really wanted to pick it up. Got it off my library app, and I read it as like an ebook. And I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. It was really different than his previous 2. I feel like they've all been really different. So this one was more like espionage, spy-ish thriller. But I mean, there was also like a murder. It's this group of kids who are in this group home when they're younger. And they, at the very beginning, they kill somebody. You see that, well, you see that, you just don't know who they kill. And then it jumps to, I think it's 5 of them, but don't quote me on that. And then it jumps to the future, and then it goes through each person's perspective, and someone tries to kill each and every one of them at some point. It's many, many years later. I don't remember how many. They're adults, children, whatever. So they all kind of, a little bit later in the book, they all get back together and are like, what the heck? Like, why is someone trying to kill us? But then they're like, probably that shady thing we did when we were kids. So they're trying to figure out who knows about it, who's trying to kill them, like who's hired a hitman to kill them. So, I mean, it was super fast paced, and I think it would make a great movie. And I did enjoy the like flashbacks to the group home childhood and like what they did and how it all connected. Like, it ended up being really good, but I just don't normally read like hitman trying to kill you situation. I don't know. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. But I did still really enjoy it. I was surprised because when I started it, I was like, oh no, I don't think I'm gonna like this. But I did really enjoy it. So I gave it 3 stars because I read it pretty fast and I had a good time. Is it something I would actively seek out? Probably not. Only because it was Alex Finlay and I didn't get the synopsis very well in my head before I grabbed it. But other than that, I don't think I would have picked it up. Let's see. Oh, and that What Have We Done had, like I said, every one of those characters has like their own POV. And then even the hitman, I think at one point has a point of view. So it's a lot of point of views. They jump back and forth in time, so it might be a little confusing if you don't like that situation in books. There was a lot of it. The next book I read was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, another romance author I've never read from before. So this book is about these 2 best friends from high school. And this is them as adults. The guy is an NFL football player, and the girl is like a ballet teacher. Whatever, that doesn't really matter. But this is like them being in love with each other since childhood, never telling each other, and just being friends this whole time. And this is, at the very beginning of the book, he breaks up with his girlfriend because she's awful. And they both kind of like come to the realizations in their head that this is the first time we've both been single since we were kids. Like, one of them has been in a relationship, or both of them, and so this is the first time that they're both single. And so both of them in their head, because you get both their point of views, they both love each other and they're obsessed with each other, but they never tell each other. And when I tell you this was the slowest of slow burns I've ever read, I want to say I was listening to it as an audiobook. I think 85% of the way through is when they finally like admitted they like each other. 85. I was very angry because it's kind of annoying. I don't love, like, just tell them. I don't know. But I guess I get it in real life. If I like somebody and, I didn't think they were going to like me back, I wouldn't tell them. But it's a romance book, so it was, I know, and I'm in his head and I'm in her head, and it's annoying because I'm like an outside perspective. I realize that they both like each other and they just won't tell each other. So in your head, you're thinking, what the heck happens in that 85%? Well, great question. He's an NFL football player, so he has paparazzi around all the time. So their publicist comes up with this like scheme, I don't know, to have them fake date for publicity to get money, because she did this thing and then that involved Tide. It's very strange. But Tide was willing to pay them a lot of money to fake date and film a Super Bowl commercial because he was in the Super Bowl. So yeah, they fake date, but they actually really like each other, so it's very weird. And yeah, It's a romance book, and I just told you they confess their feelings to each other 85% of the way in. And once that happens, it's like super cute. Their relationship's adorable. It's closed door. Nothing like steamy happens, to my knowledge, if I can remember correctly. Nothing steamy happens. It was super cute, but I gave it 3 stars because I was literally screaming because 85%, dude. That's too far in a romance book for them to not be together, in my opinion. I don't know. It was very frustrating for me. But maybe if I didn't know his perspective and know his feelings, I would understand it more. But just knowing both was hard. It was very hard. So overall for May, I read 2,857 pages. Like I said, 8 books. My average rating was 4, so that's pretty good, I think. 4 5 stars, 1 4 star, 2 3 stars, 1 2 stars, and no 1 star. My biggest fault was I only owned one of them at the time. I bought this Part of Your World after I listened to it because I loved it so much, and I already forced multiple of my friends to read it. But everything else I either got from Livy or I borrowed from a friend, so I didn't actually read any of my physical books this month, which I need to fix, but that's okay. My favorite book I read was One True Love's, Part of Your World being a very close second. My biggest surprise was Serpent and the Wings of Night, for sure, because like I said, I've never really read an adult fantasy book, like a romance fantasy book, and I freaking loved it. And I've since then read another one, but I'm not going to tell you what yet. And then the biggest disappointment was definitely Secretly Yours, because I really enjoyed my previous Tessa Baylee book, and I really did not like that one. And it sucks, because I thought I would love it, because it looked cute, just like it happened one summer. But it just wasn't the same, like at all. And I hated it. Okay, next up, we are going to draw a card. So I pick a book that I have to read in June. You ready? Can you read that? Read a book on the ends of your shelf. I might have to think about that and update you on my June wrap up, because I'm a very big mood reader, so it definitely depends on what I'm in the mood for. And a lot of my shelves, I have like a stack of books on the end, like stacked up. So it's not just like, oh, I have one book. No, I have like 6 right here on the end of this shelf. So I have to go through a lot of books to figure that out. So I will do that on my own time and update you on my wrap up next month. So thank you guys so much for watching and spending your time to watch this video. It means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.